Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello.
Wait, before you even do the intro, where episode?
We're recording it.
Oh, okay.
We are currently recording it. Hello, and welcome to... Fuck me. Okay. Hello, and welcome to episode 120 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host, and with me, as always, the fuck do I want to call you today? The purveyor of problems, Darick Oswald, my problematic friend. How are you?
I'm more like a prophet of problems.
Sure, prophet of problems. That sounds great.
Because when you describe me, you could say, and he has risen. But of course, that's R-I-Z-Z, as the kids say.
Well, we know...
Yeah, let that one sink in.
That's
let
awful.
it marinate for a minute. That's good stuff.
I don't like this at all. I would like to point out that so when we started doing this together, a year and change ago now.
You thought I was respectable?
No, I knew the company you kept. Fuck no, I knew you weren't respectable. Okay. I was always very nervous about trying to do this show without show notes or with limited show notes. I always felt like, I need a structure. Nowadays it's like, I didn't type anything. We're just going to fucking do it anyway. It's fine. Nothing can ever possibly go wrong. And here we are, currently talking about nothing at all.
So what I did in Flesh and Blood this week.
Oh, that's what we're doing. Sure. Sounds great.
See, listen, this is why you have me. You don't need show notes. So what I did in Flesh and Blood this week was I unfortunately did not make my armory. I would have had to have went tonight. However, I have a valid reason for skipping it, which is I can now finally, because I know you've asked me at least once a week, if not more, but I can finally confirm that I will be in LA this weekend.
No shit.
So I was doing some bookings. I have arranged for flight, hotel, and they should be asleep, so I can say this somewhat loudly, trips to Disneyland. So I am bringing the wife and children. So I will be at the event, but I am also staying a couple of days extra. My youngest son, Monroe, turns 8 next week. The boys are on spring break next week. So I figured, listen, I'm going to go out to LA for the event anyway. Why not see if we can just bring the family, stay a couple of extra days since they don't have school, and celebrate the birthday. So that is what we are going to do. I was trying to talk Flake into going to Disneyland with me on Monday, but I don't think is staying extra days or something. So, if you want to run around with the fam at Disneyland on Monday, let me know. My
flight back is on Monday. So I will not be able to make that work because somebody didn't tell me until literally right fucking now.
I have given you the most notice I could minus what is it? It's 10:30 Eastern right now. So give or take 3.5 hours. So I have only waited 3.5 hours to tell you from confirmation.
My flight leaves in like 46 hours. For LA.
Yeah, I know that like 2 weeks ago you mentally clocked in at there's no way he's going. So I was very excited.
No, that's wrong. That is wrong. I put it at exactly a Sophie chance because you had kept telling me that she hadn't said no and that she was still asking about it. And that made me think, all right, the pilot of this vessel is currently Sophie. And if that's the case, there is still a shot at this.
There is still a shot at this, yes. And it turns out that was a pretty good shot because I am confirmed. I'm very excited to be there. Obviously, there's a ton of awesome events, a lot of great people I know that are going. Ijur is going to be there, and
yeah,
I can get my art from him in person. I don't have to do it through you by proxy now, so that'll be fantastic. I'm just really looking forward to the trip overall. The kids don't know, like, it's going to be a full surprise. Like, literally Thursday night, we're going to be like, hey, Pack, we're going on a trip this weekend, and then just take them to the airport.
Because that always works out.
Right. So, I mean, it'll be a good time. We have never been to the Avengers campus.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, both my kids are named after comic book heroes. Kind of a big deal. We got to take them to the Avengers campus at least once. So overall, very, very excited, both for the Flesh and Blood event and the family stuff. I also, due to some email exchanges that I've recently had, I know some of the LSS folks are going to be there, including our good friend Alex, who is fantastic. So Mr. Norville, on the off chance you are listening, I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing you again as well.
Yeah, it should be a great time. I'm glad to hear you're going. Obviously, I enjoy our little talks on our podcast here, but it's much more fun in person.
And I know how much you love Stark.
Listen, I would take a bullet for your children. Either one of them.
They're great.
However,
they're just little me's, and that's the problem.
They're just little U's, and that's an issue. God damn it. But yeah, so it'll be good. That'll be a lot of fun. Are you planning on playing in the calling? Are you planning on anything? So,
well, I'm for sure playing and stuff on Saturday. My biggest dilemma right now is I'm gonna bring constructed deck with me, and maybe a commoner deck, because I was looking at the events and my choices right now are kind of twofold. I either play in the calling, and then if I somehow am doing very well, I continue to play, but then that would eat into family time that I wanted to do on Sunday, like if it goes long. Now, 99% chance that that's just not something to worry about, because the constructed deck I plan on bringing is Arachne, and while I have a ton of fun playing that deck, and I think that it's better than people give it credit for right now, I don't think it's like top 8 of calling good. So I don't know. I could just, play in the calling. Option 2, however, is there is a classic constructed side event for the really cool alternate art energy potion on Saturday, as well as a gold foil event for commoner.
Yep.
And I might be lucky. We've got like a couple of times in the past where locally we've ran commoner events. Like I wouldn't say like a lot, but I think more commoner games than I feel like most will have. And I have a pretty good idea of like what's good in the format. So there is a part of me that kind of wants to say, okay, I'm not going to play in the calling. I'm going to do the energy potion side event, and I'm going to go try to spike a commoner event. I am undecided. I will probably take tonight and then through the workday tomorrow to make my final decision, and then build my decks, pack everything up tomorrow night, and go from there.
I just now registered for the calling and the two of the Friday energy potion events. So I will.
I won't. I was gonna say I won't get there in time on Friday. So that's the other problem is I'll probably only come away with the one energy potion, and that's kind of why I don't want to miss out on it. But it does also then mean skipping the calling. So I don't know.
Yeah, I will play in at least one other energy potion event just so I get a place out of them. But I haven't decided what I want that to be yet, kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll talk off, recording about all logistics and stuff like that. But I am excited to hear you're going, personally. And I think that there's a lot of listeners that are going to be like, holy shit, we get both of them?
Yeah.
Fuck me. Which, again, for a price. But
hey, the Pro Tour brings us out, because Pro Tour Baltimore, I think, was the last event we had, both of us, right?
Let me think about that.
Not counting the realm event. So obviously we were at the realm,
the rumble.
Yeah, the big rumble. Well, and the brawls, we've been at those as well.
And the cruise ship.
Yeah, the cruise ship. I just meant as far as if you're talking like either Pro Tours or Worlds. Pro Tour Baltimore, this was like the last one of those that we were at. So
I think that's the only larger event we've ever been to together.
I'm pretty sure we've been to other callings before, especially in that first year when they had a bunch of them back to back. Because I went to like
Indy, yeah, we stayed in the same Airbnb, and then Pittsburgh, and okay. So yeah, we've done that before, but yeah, this will be the first Pro Tour we're both at, or Pro Tour Worlds. So outside of Baltimore, since Baltimore, since you basically lost an arm. So congratulations there. I would like to say that I did abso-fucking-lutely nothing in Flesh and Blood because I was in Guadalajara, Mexico. And let me tell you, did you know that the liquor tequila is named after a town called Tequila?
I did know that. Yeah. I hear that they have beautiful sunrises.
They do. And yes, they do. And that's probably what the drink is named after, but I have no idea. So we went to the town Tequila, and that's where the original Jose Cuervo distillery is. And the blue agave fields, which are awesome. Like, they're just beautiful. It's all lies in the shadow of a dormant volcano, and it's super cool. However, you take this tour through the factory and stuff, and they just pour tequila down your throat for like 6 hours. And I'm like, okay, great idea. And then drinking, then I think we go to the restaurant that is Cholula, which is where they make Cholula, the hot sauce. So now we're just continuing the cycle there. And I basically drank for 5 straight days. I am mostly made out of tequila right now.
You know what's interesting? I'm surprised that there are so many things that are named after the locations. So you mentioned tequila. Listeners, you may or may not know this, but the liquor Scotch is actually named after the tape you used to wrap Christmas presents.
It really isn't. It very much so isn't. And the tape is not named after the liquor.
Are you sure? That doesn't sound right to me.
Absolutely positive.
Jamie, pull that up.
Who?
Sorry, I was doing a very bad Joe Rogan impression.
Okay, I don't watch Joe Rogan.
I don't either. I have seen enough. It's one of those things that you know against your will. I've seen enough memes where it's like he says something stupid, person's like, that's not right. He's like, I don't believe you, and then he says to his producer, Jamie, pull that up.
And then he's always wrong.
Well, yeah, I assume. I don't know. Like I said, I don't watch it either. That's why I can't do a better impression, because I don't know the tonality, the mannerisms, or whatever. I've only ever consumed this in like a 4-panel webcomic meme format.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this entire like wedding, the wedding on Saturday, the wedding ceremony started at like 6 p.m. outdoors. The sun was setting. It was absolutely gorgeous. The first opportunity to leave the reception was at 1 a.m. But the last opportunity was at 3 a.m. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to be the best representative when I'm abroad that I can be. And that means Mama didn't raise no bitch and we're on that 3 a.m. train. We are not leaving early.
I was going to say, first of all, you probably, if those are the rules, you're probably taking me away against my will, because well, you're right. I have to be the best representative when I'm abroad, which is why I may or may not have one time been wandering around Kyiv at like 4 a.m. from karaoke bar to karaoke bar, and then like texting my buddy to call the embassy if I go missing.
Yeah.
So I've been there, but also I would just like to say, I feel like something was lost in translation. I feel like you probably could have left before the 1 mark. I think any departure is allowable if you're just willing to be trafficked. Like, that's like a Mexican law.
Yeah, that's fine. But there were shuttles back to the hotel. And the earliest shuttle was at 1 a.m. And the last shuttle was at 3 a.m. And so we got back to the hotel at like 4 a.m. And it was so much fun to hang out with like all the, like, it was people from everywhere too. So there was, people from New Zealand, Germany, Argentina. Where else was in there? Oh, Ireland. Obviously Mexico. All of us idiots from the States. It was just a great little melting pot, 300 fucking people at an open bar at this insane venue with a mariachi band playing behind me at dinner. And then a DJ set going for the reception with these fucking servers. I was trying to hide from the server because if he saw that your drink was remotely close to empty, he was going to give you another one. And it's really impolite to say no.
If there's one thing I know from my day job, it's that you can't hide from servers. They will find you.
Fair. And that's process servers, though, completely different.
No, actually, I meant servers that will catch on fire.
That too.
And yeah.
But so at one point I walk away from our table because every table has an assigned server. And so I walk away from my table, to an area that is nowhere near and turn my back to it. So I'm not facing it and he can't see my drink and have a conversation with somebody. I turn around and he's right there. He just goes, "Cerveza?" I'm like, fuck. Yeah, come on. And this is the entire night.
So this is what happened, right? You were just trying to have a classic experience, right? Something that you've been through a couple hundred times before. And then what you're telling me is somehow someone spliced into that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We definitely had Cerveza Cristal. It was definitely one of those trips where everything was so cool and so good and so much fun that it felt like everything was better in Mexico.
Well,
and I mean, the food was exceptional the entire time. Eating nothing but their breakfast is just barbacoa. You're trying to tell me that a 72-hour simmered in spices beef taco or in quesadilla is just what you call breakfast.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I mean, that makes sense because if you've already had to let it sit for 72 hours, why would you want to wait to the end of the day?
Right,
it's already done the sitting. So enjoy it now, right? You wake up excited for that.
Yeah. And so there was, like I said, there are so many stories to tell from that trip. A lot of them I'll save for next week and on our little live show. And then there's in person over the weekend. But man, I got to see a lot of different, kind of how the other half lives type stuff. And also just got to spend time with people that I don't get to see a lot of, just because they live in bumfuck or we're all just we lead super busy lives. Everybody was like, "You're going to go and get on a fucking airplane to Los Angeles in 3 days." I'm like, yeah. I don't love myself. If you were ever under that impression, I'm here to fix that. I really don't. So we're going to make this as hard as possible on myself. But yeah, I will get there Thursday night to LA, pretty late. So I'm not partaking in any of the other festivities. But I do plan on being at the venue early. I'm at the hotel connected to it at the Moxie. So super easy for me to just bop on down. It looks like there's a full slate of stuff going on. There's also the renowned LSS merch booth will be in effect.
I'm seriously hoping that the prices of items are not the same as they were at Worlds, because I really wanted one of those hoodies. I settled for a t-shirt, and I say settled. The only reason I even bought the t-shirt was because I had famously lost my luggage. And so it was like, well, if I have to buy clothes, I might as well buy one of the things that I wanted anyway, but I still went with the cheaper option because they were nice hoodies. It's not like I'm knocking that. It's just they weren't, to me anyway, $100 hoodies. So yeah, I'm hoping
maybe,
if they're even $50, $60, something like that, that's
reasonable.
more palatable. But yeah. I don't know. It felt especially gouged because it was the first time that they had offered merch, and I didn't want to, sometimes when things happen, they're testing the market, and so I wanted to give them my data point of this is too much for me to purchase, and then if it comes down, I will reward them with my money.
Fair enough. Yeah, so in the world of Flesh and Blood, now that we've gone 20 minutes without really talking about fucking anything, in the actual world of Flesh and Blood, they were 2 Battle Hardened weekends. Well, 1 Battle Hardened PTI event weekend, 1 Battle Hardened, I believe. No, there's 2 PTI events. That's right. Okay. Or Pro Quest Plus. I guess they're still calling PTI events on the mothership. So PTI events.
Yeah, because even that's still better than Pro Quest Plus. Man. Sorry. Again, I'm in a better space this week, but I still think it's a bad
still
name.
Not there. Okay. So the first one we got is Battle Hardened Kiel, which was 140 player Battle Hardened, so not small.
Yes, not small.
Not small. Won by Joshua Worth on Kasai with hatchets. So this was a little bit of a meta attack in my estimation, mainly because it allows things like cleave and to go into Dromai and then Spill Blood.
I was just going to say, Spill Blood's still a hell of a card. I think that's part of the reason that we haven't gotten slightly more axe support is just because some of the stuff that already exists is actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, and then I believe I need to look at this to see if it's up yet. I hadn't seen the deck list yet, but it is now up, so I can check this really quick. It is running... Actually, it's only running 16 blues, so not a ton of blues, but it is running multiple pieces of Null Rune, so it doesn't just kind of give up that matchup.
Yeah.
And it is a much more focused on... It's much more focused on, like, blood on her hands, because you can't make... The problem here is that you can't make hatchets free with Kasai's ability. So you have things like, this is much more a we're not losing to Kano deck.
Yes. That was kind of the way that I took it.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense. So you still have the things that are like non-negotiables, like playing all 12 copies of Blade Runner, or sorry, in this case, 9 copies of Blade Runner, because you can't play run through. So it's playing all 9 copies of Blade Runner. It's playing Rainbow Hit and Run. Actually, no, just yellow and blue hit and runs. That's right. And so it's playing shift so that you can, because the second hatchet, if you ever get into that spot where you want to be able to then nourishing behind it, makes it a lot easier. And then, like we talked about, Spoils of War and Spill Blood. Plus, you get, this is playing a full suite of Oasis Respites and Take It on the Chins, which are very helpful into Kano, plus 2 pieces of Null Rune. This definitely looks like a meta attack, but it's not a bad one. Like, this is still doing Kasai things. I do find it interesting also that this is playing a bit of a shunt game plan. So it is for the matchups you want that. It does have Tunic as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, what's interesting is while this is very clearly a meta attack where on the surface you can say, okay, they definitely came in with a plan against Kano, the rest of it looks like, in my opinion, the way like Decimator Dory looks. It's very defensive and like you said, has the shunts. And honestly, like with the Warrior suite of equipment, it's very reasonable to just say, okay, if I play just a pretty traditional like defensive warrior, I can have a couple of big turns. Obviously, like you said, they're setting up for blood on her hands here as opposed to the big sword turns. In many ways, playing Kasai here is more about getting that specialization than it really is even just using her ability, which is fine. But it's just interesting that Warrior is so strong with the suite of equipment that it has access to, along with the block threes, that you can get away with this kind of defensive build against everything else and then still shore up your game so well against Kano.
Right. Yep. And this was, again, this felt like they knew it was coming. So I think the top 8 did, because if you look at it, there are 2 Kasais in the top 8. A Dromai that was in the finals with the Kasai, 2 Dorinthias, so there were 4 total warriors sitting in the top 8, and then 2 Katsus and a Bravo. So that's That's a little different than what we've been seeing in the US, because we're not seeing any Katsus really. And then
there was Katsu in the other event as well, right?
Yes. So Katsu actually won the PTI event.
Yeah.
Yep. So you have York Schulte winning on Katsu, and the rest of that top 8 was Victor was in second. So Victor lost that one. There were 2 Dromais, 2 KOs, a Levia, and a dash. So quite a bit there, but interesting enough, in neither of these were any Kanos. So maybe.
So this is one of those weird things where it's like, was there no Kanos because there weren't enough in the field, or was there no Kanos because a bunch of them were doing well and then got bubbled out by these decks that targeted them?
Right. And that's hard to see without having like the entire metagame in front of you. But in this case, like Bravo, Katsu has game into Kano, but it all comes down to, did you find a way to deal, 30 some odd damage to me first, or did I hit multiple surgings? Which one happened first?
Mm-hmm.
And if the Katsus also can play a little bit of a null rune plan if they feel like it. You played enough Bravo to know that you have AB a million if you want it. Like, it's not that hard.
I was gonna say I still find most Bravo players they tend to just do the AB3 thing and hope that with the 30 health you can just pressure them before they can assemble the combo. It's not something I necessarily disagree with. It's just one of those kind of draw dependent game plans, because the neat thing about Bravo is that you can be aggressive, but because you have such a suite of disruption, specifically with your discard, if you're on pummels and crippling crushes, Kano really can't stop crippling crush. Like, you just eat the cards and move on. So if you can line those up with him also only having 30 health, it's entirely reasonable that you can get there that way. But you are right. There have been times in the past where I have run AB4, AB5 even, where you just run like hammer and lantern, and then you just say, all right, every turn is, hold 2 blues to AB5 and use the other 2 blues to swing a Nothos, rinse and repeat. Like,
yep, every turn. I mean, I think that's totally reasonable. As a play into that, but and also we've been seeing a bit of more of Rhinar over here too, and this seemed more KO heavy, which is not a bad thing. But I think we're in a spot now where, like, if you think about when we're talking about these decks, where in a lot of ways we're just saying any deck on any given day can get there, pilot dependent, because there's no Azaleas here. We've seen Azaleas do well.
Yep.
There's no Prisms here. There's no Boltons here. We've seen all of them do well.
We saw the one Dromai, right? But that's another deck that I'm not surprised if I see.
Yep. There's one Dromai and there's one Dromai in the first one, and then the same pilot finished in the top 8 of the PTI event, and then there was another Dromai in the top 4 of the PTI event.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's man, it seems really wide open, and I know we've talked about that quite a bit. But
dashes, right? Like, I'm not surprised if I see a dash. I'm not surprised.
Dash
obviously,
Kano,
not surprised. I was just kind of thinking out loud, right? Like, there are very few heroes where if I did see it, I would say, like, hey, I'm surprised. And even though I am, a big, like, I'm coming around on Arachne, and I enjoy playing him a lot more than I used to. He would be somebody I would be surprised. Riptide is somebody I would be surprised.
Riptide,
right?
I'd be surprised. But we've also seen that, like, Riptide can do well. It just happens to bubble out a lot.
And I think that he honestly just needs Kano to
go away.
Yeah, well, just like wane in popularity or whatever, and then I think you'll see a little bit more of him. I think that he would actually do pretty well into some of the brutes and so forth. But like, I say, like, okay, Arachne I don't expect, but part of the reason I don't expect Arachne is because Uzuri is also somebody who's routinely popping up, right? Not in huge numbers, but again, if you see an Uzuri or even 2 in the top 8, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But we see a bunch of Katsus with no Phis, and we see, like I said, the Warrior spread with no Boltons is also kind of one of those that, okay, sure.
Occasionally we see a Dorinthia. That doesn't surprise me either.
Nope, there's 2 sitting here. It's like I said, it just feels open. Just play the deck that you feel the most comfortable playing, and you'll probably be okay. I think that just kind of holds true, even if that's like a Vinset. Like there are Vinset decks that are doing well here and there too. It's just play what you think is good enough and go from there. But the bubbled up meta does feel like you need to have a plan against Droma. You need to have a plan for Kasai. You need to have a plan for Guardian in general.
I don't think it's necessarily because he's a bad hero, but I would be surprised if we saw a Viserai. And the reason for that is because, as weird as it sounds, it's because Kano is popular.
Right.
So like the moment that you have any sort of like Kano game plan, then you already have a Viserai game plan, but probably better because now you can just put in the AB1, but all of the blues that you would have been packing extra for Kano are just getting you all that extra mileage against the rune chance and whatever anyway. So
yep.
I don't know. Obviously that's a very reductive take, and there's a lot more to that matchup. Don't get me wrong. But like he's another one who's been like on the trough side of crest and trough patterns,
sure.
right?
Sure. Yes, very much so with the dip and not the spike. Buy the dip, sell the rip. But
buy the dip, eat the chip. Now I'm hungry.
Rip it, dip it, eat it, yeet it, repeat it. Because you just want one dip for every chip. It's a proper way to do it. So like you give you a dip cup of like barbecue sauce, and you're dipping chips in the barbecue sauce.
I'm talking like French onion dip, and I don't need disgusting. Like a cup. I need like the bucket you buy it in, just put in front of me with the bag of Ruffles, and the Ruffles are actually shovels that are just edible.
I'm sure that somebody can make this happen.
Yeah, you know who it is? It's probably happen. Tommy Fresh. Like he's going to be right next to me with his bottle of blue cheese, and we're just going to be tearing it up.
All right, you guys go rip it up. That's totally fine. And but yeah, that's I don't know, man. Like I don't know what would surprise me outside of like a couple of things. Like if there was a Betsy that showed up, that would probably surprise me.
We had the one in RTN, if I remember right, but it was like hyper defensive. Like I think somebody's analysis that I saw, and I kind of chuckled because I couldn't find any flaw in it. They were like, they're literally running this for the cap. Because there's no specializations or anything that warrant running her with that deck list and how defensive it was over literally any other hero.
Just doing it for Chapeau.
It was either you're doing it for the cap because you get one extra block guaranteed as opposed to skull cap where you have to time it, or they just really wanted to do it with Betsy and there wasn't that much difference between, like that's also entirely reasonable. But I thought that was, fun analysis where it was like they've decided that one health is all that matters.
Sometimes it is. I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? Like sometimes it just is. Moving on to Fort Worth, this was at the Hunter Burton Memorial. If you're not familiar, that has been a long-running Magic event that benefits the Hunter Burton charity. If you don't know any of the backstory there, I suggest you look it up. It's, like I said, been a long-running event, and it's nice to see Flesh and Blood there now to help raise awareness for the charity and for the foundation and such. But we had ourselves a Blitz Battle Hardened, which is always fucked up. There really is never anything in Blitz that can surprise you. And so in this case, we had, well, again, to lack of surprise, we have Brody Spurlock winning on Victor Goldmane. So just let's go do that. Sounds great.
I feel like right now, I know that publicly it's kind of been talked about that Brody is potentially on the hunt to have the most XP, but I have this working theory that Brody also wants to win an event with each different hero, because I feel like he shows up with a different hero every time. And I know it's probably not that drastic, but it's like, oh, it's Brody, so for sure he's going to be on, and then he's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he never is. So love that. Love that for him.
the rest of this top 8 was just all different heroes, no repeats. So we had Rhinar, Dash Database, Dorinthia, Prism Advent of Thrones, Emperor Drakai of Aesir, Bravo, and Professor Teklovasen.
Teklo.
Professor Teklo.
So there is a name that I also would be very shocked to see in a CC event.
Max or Teklo, honestly.
Well, if it was Max, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if it was Ben.
Sure.
But yeah, otherwise I think I'd be shocked. Teklo, I would for sure be shocked, mostly because the big difference between CC and Blitz, and the reason why I think that he's far more playable in Blitz is wizards, right? Your evos don't stop arcane, and your attacks are not fast enough to outpace the combos.
And the only wizard
until Kano is gone or he gets some evos that have AB.
And the only wizard in Blitz is the Emperor, who is a wizard that wants to attack.
Yep.
So you can live longer because you have evos. There was the PTI event was classic constructed. So we do have a little bit there as well. This one, again, a little less diverse. You have Neil's Corner Up on KO winning. There's one other KO in the top 8. There were 2 Dorinthias, 3 Dromais, and an Uzuri. Notably, Michael Hamilton was playing KO. So you can know immediately what he's not playing at the Pro Tour. The interesting part here is how much Dromai was sitting in there in the top 8. So this was a 70 player PTI event, I believe. 70 plus ish. And yeah, 3 Dromais is a lot, but it's also very possible that, it's also not surprising to see that they finished losing to KO and Dorinthia, because a Dorinthia can just, if they don't have a way to keep Dawnblade from getting counters, if they're more big dragony and just can't handle it, they're just going to get plowed over. And obviously KO has poppers for days and can just get the tempo advantage if they play it right, or just hit a big turn that Dromai can't handle. It snowballs fast because they don't really have armor to block with. So you eat their hand and they still take 15 damage. That's a lot. Like, those are very difficult to navigate. So it's, and then obviously the Uzuri, we've seen the Uzuri lists do well. This isn't new. With Uzuri, you're getting people figuring out a little bit more as time has gone on. And it wouldn't, if you're going to I guess we'll talk about that here in a moment. But to me, Uzuri is a very, very good deck and very viable into a lot of what's out there right now.
Uzuri is very good because she's flexible. I talk about there's a lot of different ways to build her. A lot of the time it depends on which end of the spectrum you want to be in terms of your blue count and things like that. But the end of the day, even the aggressive versions of her, she's just a really good mid-range deck is the best way I know how to put it. She has the potential to block very well because so many of them are running, your 0 for 4 defense reactions, but also, frailty trap still pretty common and does a lot of work in certain matchups. You have access to not necessarily as many as a Guardian, but enough poppers that you've got game into Dromai, right? You've got just enough go again where if you need a little bit of a wider turn, you can do that. You obviously have the isolate plan if you're trying to go tall. She's flexible in the deck building process, and then she's flexible in the piloting process. And so I think that she's very good and can find a lot of wins in any meta depending on pilot skill. But a lot of it also is that pilot skill. She does, people are figuring it out, but it's also something where you just need the reps because you got to kind of know exactly, right? When do I go tall? When do I go wide? When do I block big? When do I take the damage? I think one of the biggest things that you run into with the assassin class in general is figuring out when it's acceptable to take the damage to crack back, but also figuring out when it's appropriate to dagger. I have kind of realized this after I was giving Greg pointers on Arachne, but the same pointers I was giving him, I think, also stand to be completely true with Uzuri, which is that daggers are very rarely, at least in the current metagame, very rarely a main part of the game plan. They are supplemental, and you have to know like when to prioritize them, because most of the time you're better off pretending that they don't exist, outside of flick knives and whatever, obviously. But, there was a time during the Oldhim days. And,
days.
During the olden days. And we saw that with Sam Dando, where you would prioritize daggers because you knew you were going to be in for a grind and you couldn't get fatigued, right? I don't think that there's a lot of those style of decks currently in the metagame.
No.
Where you have to go hardcore into the dagger plan. And I do think that for newer players who are picking it up, they just really they want to get that dagger and then swing. And as a result, that could have, if you take that blue and you use it to block 3, right? That could have been 3 damage negated, but instead you turned it into 1 damage potentially delivered, right?
Yep.
So
I guess we also this weekend had an Age Open series too. And this was also, the Age events are often very competitive as far as the players you have in them and then who's performing and who's not. So in this case, it was won by Ethan Van Sant on
Levia.
On Levia, weird. And the top 8 was again super diverse. The only repeat was Dorinthia. There are 2 Dorinthias, a Dromai, a Katsu, a Riptide, Levia, Azalea, and KO. So again, people are shifting to Dorinthia a bit. However, one of the Dorinthias was Charles Dunn. That's not Dorinthia. That's, you take off the mask and it's just Oldhim. So
I don't think that's fair.
No, it's totally fair. Are you fucking kidding me? That is Decimator Dory. I almost guarantee it. And
Charles Dunn is obviously very famous for his Briar piloting and very famous for his Oldhim piloting. And he knows how to play a defensive game plan incredibly well. But he can play anything. He's just really good at figuring out what I would describe as like the internal mechanisms. Again, for the people who don't know, because I met Charles originally, I know him as Tin Man because I met him from forever ago covering other games and doing esports stuff. So I knew him on Twitter as Tin Man for ages before I actually was like, oh, you're the same person. But he works in game design, right? That's what he does. So he's very good at figuring out kind of the inner workings and then how to exploit it. I think that's why he made that Briar deck so famously piloted, but also so famously designed, because he just did the math, right? And he figured out I can have a 15 value turn almost every turn. So law of large numbers is basically saying I'll just come out ahead more times than not, and then he rolled with it.
Sure.
So all of that to say, there's no way in hell it wasn't a defensive Dory, but
it was Dory.
It could have been. It could have been.
No. The dude has, yes, I firmly believe he could play anything if he wanted to. I think he also feels like his highest percentages are if he's playing a very defensive, fatigue-oriented game plan, which Dory's probably the best at right now.
Yeah. And I think that you're correct. I think that's actually the best way to put it. And when you analyze the way that he tends to look at games, it makes sense, because when you talk about those percentages, right? Having that baseline of 3 is usually a whole lot easier to accomplish when you're being defensive, right? If you're being an offensive deck, for example, trying to find your 0 for 4s with go again gets harder and harder. There's usually some sort of setup or qualifier, right? Scar for Scar, for example, requires the life. And, there's class specific stuff, or Ravenous requires deck building. So you have to have enough reds where you're hitting that consistently, all of that, right? So you have to work harder to get that value. Now there's a lot of like 0 for 3s, but even still, they're going to be stuff like a nimbleism or a minnowism or whatever, or a class card when you're trying to go offensive. And so I think that it is fair for someone to just look at it and say, okay, well, he's done the math and he's figured out this is the best way. And it's actually, we were talking about that other warrior player, but I think that this is also another great example. It wouldn't surprise me to see him. I haven't seen the deck list, but it would not shock me to see him running like Tunic with Shunts, just because that becomes a 1 for 6.
Or right? It basically becomes an unmovable that costs less. And that's great value, especially if it doesn't cost you a card. It costs you a pip off of a fucking just it costs you the shunt and that's it. And then the other side of patience. That. Right. It costs patience, right. And then but it's also not surprising when we talk about that the loss in the top 8 was to Ethan on Levia, because Levia starts breaking the rules. Yeah. And having these giant ass attacks that take more to cover up, and then can also do some of them, multiple times in a turn, start leaking damage, and then the conversion to end the game, then to finish the game is right.
I was just about to say the biggest issue I think with the like a defensive Dorinthia, is that you've got a lot of raw numeric value. You don't have a lot of disruptive value. And that is very rough into a Levia. So just like, for example, I've always felt far better piloting Bravo into Levia than I did Oldhim when I played a lot of Oldhim, because Bravo just had more disruptive options. And it's much easier to deal with a Levia that either like doesn't have Go Again or has a 2-card hand or even just a 3-card hand, as opposed to like, I'm going to try to block you out, because that's where you run into problems.
Right. And I completely agree. It's very, very hard. But again, we'll see, right? I think that you could see a Fatigue Dory show up and do well, but let's shift gears here and talk about that. So every time that we have a big event, Pro Tour, Worlds, whatever, show up, a lot of times we'll end up talking about players and decks. And so let's kind of get our predictions in here. What do you think, what hero, first of all, do you think will be the most represented at the Pro Tour?
Most represented? Oh, that's easy. I personally feel like it'll be Dromai.
Dromai is my answer too. I do believe that there is so much equity in a well-piloted Dromai that it's hard to imagine that it won't be the highest represented deck. When I'm seeing Discord messages from people, asking me, "Hey, do you have Dromai cards I can borrow that don't play the fucking deck?" I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, right? So for me, it's been conversations. Now it all could be a psyop, and I like to joke and say everything is a psyop.
No, because it is.
So because it is. So it absolutely could be. But I have also had those conversations, heard the whispers, the murmurs. But also, I do, much like you said, I think that there's a lot of like equity to be found in that deck, because when it's well piloted, especially. Not that I want to praise her, but if you take a look at like Mara's version, where you can be aggressive or, truly go like that, I'm going to play to the board, go wide version. You can punish people who aren't used to piloting into it, even if they have a favorable matchup, right? So you might be on a KO with poppers for days, but then like if you don't know how to play against the aggressive one, you might pivot to the proper way to block and whatever too late. It's just a really good deck. Tome is still a hell of a card. Didn't really lose a lot in terms of like cards that directly counter it. It just the only thing that happened with heavy hitters that made Dromai kind of come down is just that more heroes that naturally do well are more popular. So she loses a little bit of like market share, but not playability.
Right. And I think, yes, 100%. So I think that that's going to be the most represented deck. What do you think is the most represented deck in the top 8? Or do you, how many different, so let's start with this. How many different heroes do you think are in the top 8?
I think we're going to have 7 different heroes in the top 8.
Okay. So one of them has to be a repeat.
One of them has to be a repeat.
So what is it?
That is a very, very difficult question to answer. But my initial gut instinct is KO. Largely because I think that there's also, outside of Dromai, I expect KO to be either second or third in terms of representation. He's got a very nice floor, and I think that helps in terms of consistency. So I lean toward him, and then if it's not him, it would this. I never thought I would say this out loud. I think it might be Bolton.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I really do. All of the Warriors, I think, are in a really good spot, but like of them, so here's my reasoning for it, right? Whenever you look at big tournaments, right, you have to be a very good player. And I am not, what I'm about to say does not take away from any of the people who routinely and consistently perform, but you also have to get a little bit of an element of luck. And so sometimes that's matchup help. Or if it's not matchup help, sometimes it's you play a deck that is just streaky. Sure. Bolton is definitely one of those decks that if you can pilot it really well, like we've seen Yuki just masterfully pilot Bolton because she's got good reps on it, right? But also, like, Bolton is the kind of deck where, you know, you can pop off and steal a win. Like, that's the way I would describe it. It's not necessarily like you get wins you don't earn because the deck is OP. It's just one of those, like, you know, oops, I win moments. And if you can get one or two of those throughout a huge tournament, that's a big deal. I think that gives him the edge over the other Warriors, right? Like if it was a Kasai, if it was a Dorinthia that got, you know, 2 of the top 8, like none of that would surprise me. But I lean toward Bolton just because he's the most likely of the Warriors to really like just have that potential to steal games.
Okay. I think that's reasonable, honestly. I think so. Personally, I feel like if I was going to take a deck that was going to put 2 copies in the top 8, I think it would still be Dromai. Just because, again, the matchup spread, there's not a lot of bad things for Dromai in most cases, and the Dromai players who are good are insanely good. But I also could see something like a Reinar.
I could see a Reinar. I'll also give you my funny answer too, because what I almost originally said when you were Kano? Like, all right, yeah, I know, but specifically it was going to be Kano. But here, are you ready? It's not just there's 2 Kanos. I was going to say
Majin and Peter.
Majin and Peter.
Yeah,
blasting.
Just blasting.
It's Majin and it's Peter. Like it's not 2 Kanos. It's Majin and it's Peter.
Yeah, I would agree with you if it was just like 14 rounds of Classic constructed.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how many draft reps those guys have gotten in. But I also feel like if one of those 2 makes the top 8, they could easily win this Pro Tour. So if one of them does, you know, if they 2-1 both their drafts, they are probably in.
So part of the reason that I kind of want to see it is they're great people. I love them both. They're also just like, they're really good at the game as well. But they're good people, but they're good competitors. Like when you watch them on camera, even though it's high, you know, tense, stressful moments, they're still having fun, right? Like, oh yeah, they're smiling, they're talking, whatever. And more than anything, what I want is now in my mind, they're almost as iconic as Brody and his sandwiches. What I call the Peter moment, right? Where there's like
head in hands,
30 cards on the table and his head's in his hands, right? Yep. Like I need that at this event at some point.
And we need the meme.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's where the end of this comes in is, you know, take your picks on who's going to win and with what. I think that if either, you know, of any of the really good Kano players that I'd be playing can just eke out an X2 in draft, that Kano wins the Pro Tour. That's what I think. if they can't or don't, my pick for hero to win the Pro Tour is probably, I don't want to say Dromai, but I think Dromai. Like, it's, unless somebody just like, I think that a Dromai is prepared for Hatchet Kasai and Cleave, just will game plan against it and be fine. If they just don't think it's a real thing, maybe they get beat up by it. I also think that I have zero reps or zero knowledge into this, but I also feel like Hatchet Kasai probably isn't as consistent in a lot of cases as Saber's Kasai against a lot of different decks, and requires a better level of piloting than playing Sabers. And Sabers requires a ton of good piloting and good decision making. Basically, it's all sequencing.
Yeah.
So there's that. I would not be surprised. I mean, honestly, if I knew what Team Blue Pitch was bringing, I would just pick that. I think that's the easy answer.
All right. So I don't know who's going to be on it. I think my pick for hero that's going to win it is going to. So I have two picks, but both of them are dark horses, right? My first like a real pick is I think that a Dorinthia will win it.
I had strongly considered that
because I expect a bunch of Dromai and because of how good they are defensively, but also there's just some really good Dorinthia players that have been waiting for their time to shine. Like if Josh LaLa wins on Dorinthia, like I'm not shocked. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know, a Dorinthia or a Kasai. I don't know why. I just I have that gut feeling it's going to be like one of those two. But my meme pick, if you will, is, because he's trying to catch a victory on them all. I'm going to say Brody Spurlock specifically wins on Prism. Just shows up with an out of the blue, like, hey, I'm doing Brody things. Oh, by the way, you lost.
Sure. Maybe it's just me hoping that Dromai loses so that we're LL'd out of that one more illusionist.
He's got a basket full of ham sandwiches and he takes a bite every time he loops Arclight Sentinel. And by the end of the event, he's put on 40 pounds.
It's not as easy as you think to loop Arclight Sentinel, but I get it.
I mean, it's not that easy for Brody to put on 40 pounds either, but
okay, fair. So we've seen a lot of shit talking going on across the social medias between the various teams and even the fucking vendors, the Min-Max in the realm, just talking shit the entire time. I'm here for it, by the way.
Yeah. Green Tree, you need to get louder.
Yeah. What the fuck, John? And so that being said, what team has the most representation in the top 8 of the Pro Tour?
I actually think the top 8 is going to be very diverse. But I think it will be 2 teams that have 2 players.
Wolfpack is law of large numbers, so you can just pick them, and you have 88 competitors.
So that's just it. It's Wolfpack, and then Peter and Majin.
So Fab Metal tokens, right?
Yeah.
Or Metal Fab tokens. Yeah, it's
Blastin'.
Okay.
That's Team Blastin'.
They just put Danny DeVito on the back of their jerseys. And it's like, anyways, I just started blasting.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to have like custom sleeves printed up. That's just Danny DeVito. Anyway, I started.
If I had
blasting.
time, I would just do that. If I had time, I would just get that done right now. But I don't think that's a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. I mean, but like jokes aside, I do legitimately think that what will happen is there will be 2 teams that have 2 players. I think Wolfpack is law of large numbers. If it's not Peter and Majin, it'll be one of the other teams. Like there will be 2 teams with 2 players and then a bunch of other teams with 1. Because again, everything is just really wide open.
Sure.
If LSS keeps this up, they're going to like spoil every other card game with how diverse their metas have been for like almost a full year now.
That's true.
We've kind of been in a golden age of.
I mean, Lexi. We came on the other side of Lexi.
Since Lexi,
yeah,
it's really been pretty wide open for the most part.
That hasn't been a year. So that's been like 6 months. Not even 6 months.
feels like a year. In card game land, it feels like a year.
Sure.
It feels like it's been a long time.
I will say that the Star Wars Unlimited meta is really fucking diverse too, though.
There are some strong opinions about that. There's a lot of people who think that's not the case because of a couple of large events where certain things showed up more. I think it's more diverse than it looks, but like all things, it's very early in that game's life cycle with one set. But right now, the community consensus is that Boba Fett with Command is supposed to be like the best deck because it continues to do well.
Yeah, but then Krennic comes in and just does Krennic things.
Well, I mean, so there's that, and like I still think that there are other decks that are good. I think that the biggest issue with that game right now is that people are trying to build decks for what they want to do instead of trying to build decks that respond to other people's power turns in the appropriate way. So like the big reason that Boba, I know that we're, off rails here, but the big reason that Boba Command is so popular and the reason it's so powerful is one, Command just has a lot of really powerful individual cards, which is a really big deal when you only have one set. I think that their rare base is the best. I've been saying it since the bases were revealed that the green one is probably the best of the rare bases. But then like when you're on the villainy side, when you get access to the
Overwhelming Barrage,
Super Laser Technician.
DJ Super Laser, sure.
Yeah, DJ Death Star. But for the people who don't know the memes or whatever, it's the Super Laser Technician. But then specifically, yes, Overwhelming Barrage. I've also been saying for a couple of weeks now, I think that's the best removal card in set one. And I think that Vader is the best legendary in set one, right? So Command has a lot of very just individually strong cards. But the big thing, and the big reason that deck is so popular right now is that they have a very strong swing turn, which is very specifically when they hit 5 resources, they can play this really powerful 5-cost unit, and they deploy their leader Boba Fett, who has 7 health. He's very hard to kill. It's just a lot of board presence, and if you don't have an immediate answer for that, you're going to fall behind. It snowballs. So people just need to do a better job of having a game plan for navigating that. There's a couple of ways to do it. Some of them will make you a bit uncomfortable, especially if you're not used to playing a control deck and you get kind of low. But I don't think that it is unbeatable. I think that, again, it's a set one of a game. It's very early. People see something working, so a bunch of people pile on, and we haven't hit the phase where everybody's going like, okay, what's the thing that beats this?
Do that thing instead.
Yeah.
Nope, understandable. I just had heard diversity, and I was like, hey, this sounds familiar.
Yeah. I mean, it is more diverse.
It's more diverse than Morgana in my mind.
I took a budget version of Sabine because I didn't even own all the stuff for the version I wanted to run, and I didn't drop a game at my first locals or whatever. I went 3-0, 2-0 each round. So
yeah, Sabine is a very, very good low to the ground aggro deck for sure. But yeah, that's with the Pro Tour coming up, like we have, obviously there's a calling, there's a Battle Hardened that's Living Legend, there's the Pro Tour itself. So we're going to see a lot of things happen here. We have some opportunities to get to some Living Legends, potentially with some finishes out of Heroes. I think that there's a lot of consensus in the community that a new, like some Living Legend rotation would be nice. Like some churn would be nice.
No. Because first of all, no. And here's why. The Living Legend tournament, again, at this event, it's going to be on a Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. We all know Sundays are for the Lord. Sunday is Starvo Day.
No, okay? Well, no, we know that.
We're not changing anything. You praise Starvo.
Sure.
That's it. Like,
okay.
If you want to play format, go play Commoner.
I was actually talking about some churn on the Living Legend leaderboard, but
sorry. I just I get excited when I think about Starvo top 8s.
Sure. So
it makes me smile like Starvo in the Starvo art. Yeah, Living Legend leaderboard. I expect some churn. I don't think it'll come as fast as people would like, but I think that's okay too. I think
Pro Tour win all but kills Dromai, Fi, or Dash. So, those are that's a big chunk of stuff. Now, Fi hasn't been a real like big threat for a while, even to the point that people are shifting Ninja to Katsu just because it's more versatile. And
I think they want to get their reps in before the next set.
Sure, that makes sense. We'll talk about that in a second, but with Dash, being so close as well, and actually putting up pretty good numbers during heavy hitter season. I mean, KO put up the best numbers during heavy hitter season with 200 points right out of the gate. Second is actually Dromai with 148. Like, Dromai could go if it, just quickly here, which wouldn't hurt my feelings by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, we'll have to see how this all works out. But we could be in for some churn here that I think is actually kind of what the doctor ordered for some people who don't believe this meta is as fun as it is. And I understand kind of where they're going with it, just because there are auto losses, quote unquote, for decks. Yeah. And that's kind of feels bad, but at the same time, most of the time it's not like that. But people hyperfixate.
Yeah, I was going to say here, if I'm being entirely honest, here is why I think that we're hearing more grumbles about it now. I think we're hearing more grumbles about it now because the meta is as diverse as it is. Those auto losses have always been there.
They have.
It's just that when you have metas that are dominated by like 3 decks, then, you have one Kano in the room, right? So like if Kano's your auto loss, like that's not a thing. Now, because it's so diverse, you literally you have no idea what you're going to sit across, and it might just be your auto loss. And so, yes, you're going to have some events where you probably run into it a few times and it's going to feel bad. This is going to sound kind of callous, but I feel like you kind of just have to get over it. And maybe I feel this way because I am somebody who I chose Bravo when I got into the game, and I got into the game right after Monarch released. And so for me, having Prism be an auto loss for like the entire tenure that she was viable, and she was meta for good chunks of those. So it wasn't like, there's one Prism in the room and I accidentally run into it. It's like, no, there's like 10 and I ran into 3 of them across my day. Right.
That'll happen.
It happens. I know that it's hard, especially when you're in the moment, but I think what you have to remember is 1, things change, won't be like this forever. And 2, there's like law of large numbers says that you won't run into those things as often. It's just that things can be streaky and it feels bad during the streaks. Like the best way that I can describe it is, every time you flip a coin, you got a 50% chance of it being heads or tails. Now, there is a 1 in 1,024 chance that gets heads 10 times in a row, right? And so during that time, it's going to feel really bad if heads is your auto loss, and it's going to feel awful. And I get it, but also the very next time you line up, it's still 50%, right?
Yeah.
And long term, it's going to be much, much closer to that. Now you extrapolate that and say, okay, well, if the meta is really wide and I'm only going to be paired into my auto losses 10% of the time. One every 10 games, like, yeah, it's going to suck if it happens, 2 or 3 times in one night. It's going to suck if it happens, 2 or 3 events in a row, but it's not going to keep happening. And if it does, it's probably a locals thing. And in which case, like, that becomes like you game plan for it. Like you have to do something, but, this is still, in my opinion, one of the best metas we've ever been in. It's still one of the card games that rewards player skill and specialization more so. Like I would still rather play this, and I guess I'm speaking from really personal experience because I did, right? Like I played into my bad matchups for a long time on Bravo when Prism was popular, but I would still rather play this game knowing like, yeah, sometimes there's basically auto losses, as opposed to playing in other games where, yeah, sometimes there's auto losses, but there's also only 3 meta decks, right? So like a third of my games are just me twiddling my thumbs. I think it's one of those like grass is always greener on the other side, but sometimes you have to think to yourself, like, is the grass greener because it's actually greener, or is it greener because I'm not over there fucking it up?
Well, 6-1 half dozen the other for a lot of people. They don't. For a lot of people, they can't distinguish. Like,
yeah,
and that's fine. Moving on quickly, we got a couple of just real quick things to touch on. First one is we do have official knowledge of what the ProQuest season prize list is. So the heroes in this one are Rainbow Foil, Betsy, Adult Betsy, Adult KO, Adult Kasai. So those are nice in the full art Rainbow Foil. And then obviously the gold foil, Common Rare Majestic that we've always had. The playmats are Judge, Jury, Executioner, and they are stunning. Yeah, these are really good. And then the sleeves for the judges are the Thamai sleeves. So, and then obviously the judge pack that gets handed out to the judge for their efforts.
I do love that they're the Thamai sleeves for judges, because it should be a character that says like you can't play things
right
for the judges. Like
a little on the nose, but not the worst. So yeah, like that's really cool. I do enjoy that they're doing this type of thing still, where there are the top 8 prizes with the heroes and then the mats and everything else. Like, I think this is a good management. And then rather than having cold foil Jubil Spellblades, but I think this is a nice little what's the word you want to use here? Compromise, I guess. But yeah, those start, I believe, on April 13th is when that season starts. That first weekend, I'll actually be in Kansas City playing at Mind Games and Magic. So if you would like to see me getting my ass beat by somebody, probably, allegedly, because these are all classic constructed, you can come to Mind Games and Magic in Kansas City. I believe it's actually Lee Summit technically, which is a suburb. But yeah, and just watch me, my brain completely bashed in. And then in Des Moines on the 20th and 21st, we'll have our doubleheader weekend here. So I'll be here for that. So I'll get at least 2 of these in. Try to play at least 3 or 4, because my intention is to go to Amsterdam regardless. So being qualified is also nice. Do you know of any that you're going to right offhand?
Not right offhand, because I have some other. I have ones that I'm eyeing, but I have some other things that are kind of circling that may or may not eat my weekends. So we're gonna have to wait and see.
Do also want to remind people that the first Realm 5K of the year is Saturday, July 20th in Princeton, New Jersey. That is the biggest thing right now, is that your $60 early bird entry is good through April 15th. After that, the price goes up to $70. So you have a little under a month to get the early bird price on that. Top 8 gets an invite to the 50K. First place gets a VIP invite, which is slightly different. And then also remember, through the end of the month, there is a promo code going on right now, which is FAPOD. 5. We decided that is talking about us overdosing, which makes complete sense after I got back from Mexico. But FAPOD 5 gets you 5% off your orders through the month of March. So please remember that is there as well. We don't have a whole lot for listener questions. I have one, but I think I want to save this one until we talk about it a little bit more, or have a chance a little bit more. The last thing I really want to talk about, though, did you see the profile picture change for
I did, yeah.
Flesh and Blood page?
I did. There's a lot of speculation about Bluesionists.
You blew myself. Yeah,
because of that. But I still think personally that it is a nod to Katsu. Really, like,
could be.
There's so many ways that you could say, like, okay, well, yeah, they're gonna do the blue pitch thing or whatever, because Katsu has forever, like literally since the dawn of the game, cared about those blue block 3s that cost 0.
Blue zeros, right? That block 3. Or they're just repping Team Blue Pitch for the Pro Tour. Maybe it's a spoiler. Maybe this is all rigged. Who knows?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait for James White to do his Vince McMahon villain arc. Sorry, I almost made it without like cracking a smile, but like once I got to the part where I was about to say James White and Vince McMahon at the same time, like I started to break a little bit, because like the idea of with if you know, but like the idea of comparing James to Vince is just like absurd and wild to me.
Yeah. They are nothing alike.
yeah.
Let's just go ahead and cover that up with they are nothing alike.
No. That's why I couldn't make it through with a straight face. It's that absurd.
Correct. Yeah, it's a little bit what the fuck at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all we got for this week. As per always, we need to thank our patrons. I almost actually forgot to do that. That'd be terrifying. We really should never do that. We should always be ready to thank the patrons. And where are my things here? I'm prepared today. I tell you what, I came off that airplane and I in Chicago looked at the time, said, holy fuck, I'm never going to make it to Des Moines in time to run Star Wars Unlimited. Got here, basically chucked the people out of my car, drove straight to run Star Wars Unlimited immediately after getting back from Mexico. Like, it was a thing. And I'd do it again. It was fun. But let's apply some filters and let's thank some people. So our associate producers are going to be Andy, Cindra, Donnie K, Jacob, Kenny, Larry, and the Salty Sea Cat. Our executive producers on up are Alex, Blaze Storm, value member of the Patreon, Dom, Lance, Good Thrust, Matt Two Tokes, Pox on Us, Trevor, Mike, Philip, Rich, and Taylor. If you are interested in becoming a patron of Flesh and Pod, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Link is in the show notes. Pick a tier, any paid tier, and you get into you can then witness the FAP After Dark shows, which will be next week on the 27th, I believe. So be ready for that. That's also the day before my favorite national holiday, which is opening day of the baseball season. So I will be pretty hype about that while I'm going on and on and on and on and on and on about other things that went on in Mexico on that show. If you do have any questions, concerns, comments, anything else, you can email us at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at fleshpod. Links are on the show notes. Links for fucking everything's in the show notes. And the easiest thing to do is click on the link that has the Discord invite in it and then come into the Discord. And then you can just ask us there. Or anyone else. It's really easy. You don't need to be a member of shit. If you are a member of shit, great. But if you're not, come on in. Doesn't matter. We are a welcoming crew when it comes to that. Charmer, where can they find you?
In the Discord.
Yep, same place. Yep, all right, cool.
That's the best place.
It is the best place.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at that Charmer. It's Charm 3R because I'm a little edgelord. Twitch and YouTube, and then if you want to hear more about Star Wars Unlimited Ice Cave Radio, that is the podcast that I do with Flake. By the way, we didn't really slander Flake this episode.
Was I supposed to?
Yeah, I thought that was this is the real reason we need show notes. Damn it, we almost missed a critical point of our show.
At no point in time have I put Flake's. I've never put Flake slander directly in the. Only a couple times have I ever put Flake slander directly in the show notes.
Just kidding. I love you, buddy. I can't wait to see you this weekend. But
absolutely.
Also, for the folks, if you want to listen to Star Wars Unlimited stuff, me, Flake, and Doa of esports fame do a weekly podcast, and we're also going to be rolling out some other stuff very soon for Star Wars Unlimited. Also, if you are more interested in Flake's content, you can read The Stoic, which is a novel that he wrote and had published.
We're actually going to be doing a film
book signing for him at the Pro Tour. Bring your copies of The Stoic.
Yes,
and he will sign them.
He will. And then also, in addition, we are going to be doing fine, whatever. We're going to be doing a script treatment and a live read of the movie script for The Stoic. And hopefully Escher will have some of the art done for the comic book by then. So we'll see what we have available for you. But yes, make sure you're there for the book signing. All you have to do is walk up to the casting booth between rounds and get Flake's attention. Make sure that you thank him for all his work. Get your signed copy of the Stoic. Also, please be sure to compliment him on his flair bartending skills.
I just had a fantastic idea.
Of course.
What if we get custom playmats and sleeves made with the cover art for the Stoic?
What is the cover? I'm actually on your website right now, which needs really updated. I just wanted to see how updated it needed, and it's pretty bad. But
mine is. I haven't touched mine in forever.
Let's find the cover art for the Stoic.
Mine mostly exists so that I get the email domain, but I do need to update it. You're not wrong.
Is it not on Amazon anymore?
No, it definitely still is. I mean, maybe after all of this, he had it pulled. Because that would Flake, I love you. Just know all of this is because.
Yeah, I don't see it on here anymore. It used to be just pop right up, but
yeah.
There are Stoic wrist wraps for powerlifting. We can get him to sign those. Stoic brand. Let me look here. The Stoic book, Matt DeMarco. Okay. Oh, there it is. Found
it is.
Yep. Okay, it's a little bit baried.
Yeah, see, that would make perfect sleeves.
It is. Yeah, that'd be great. It is currently out of print. We're actually we're approaching the 10th anniversary of the Stoic in October. We need to celebrate.
October 7th, yeah.
October 7th, yeah. So we're gonna have to get this. Miles Matthews. We're gonna have to create a Miles Matthews card, and get that printed off here. It's got some really good customer ratings. I don't understand why he's so ashamed.
It says very clearly on the cover art, part 1, and I would like you to know that I am patiently awaiting part 2. It is my Winds of Winter.
I mean, it's been as long, so sure, 10 years about right. I think that's enough Flake slander. I think we did our job.
Yeah. And again, for those who don't know, it's because
it's all out of love. Yeah, every single little bit of it is out of love. It does say it's out of print though, which is
we got to fix that.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to do this.
I've decided I just need to publish a book so that he can give me as much shit. And I've decided, because my wife was she reads a ton, like she just flies through books, but she was listening to an audio book the other day around the house, and it is naturally just smut. I mean, just
sure.
Like it's fine reading it, but once you hear somebody narrate it with like bad voice acting, I was like trying so hard like to not ruin it for her, like with laughter. But I've decided after hearing it, it was one of those moments where I was like, that's it, that gets you published. So I'm gonna write smut and get it published, smut? and then Flake will just give me.
I believe the pen name Lance Goodthrust is already gone.
Yeah, because they're a valued member of the Patreon.
Lance Goodthrust, actor Thunderballs. Okay, that's good. Lance Goodthrust, data specialist on Salesforce. Lance Goodthrust, Dangerous Liaison Books, author of Hot Coffee and Tropical Hot Coffee and Tropical Desires. There we go.
How about so instead I will use the pen name Harry Balls as a tribute to longtime mayor of Fort Wayne, Indiana.
It's a deep cut.
You can look it up. Yep.
That's a deep cut. Okay. Well, I'm going to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, you should. I don't know why you've let me keep you this long. This is the most Midwest goodbye of an episode I've ever seen us do.
It's funny because we were discussing at the wedding, we were discussing we're doing it again, by the way. And we were discussing the Midwest goodbye and the Irish goodbye. Because the Irish goodbye is just fucking dipping. Gone. The Midwest goodbye is the standing in the driveway for 6 hours and talking about the weather, current events, and everything else that you didn't talk about while you were in the house for 6 hours. And that's what the show has turned into. So
it's because when Midwesterners get together, you like shoot the shit, but you usually get together for a reason. So then when you're like, all right, well, I guess I should be going. And then that's when you all go oh wait, I wanted to mention one thing, and then that starts another conversation, and then you're like, oh, I also wanted to check with you about, and then the goodbyes are 40 minutes.
Yep, that's the way it is. All right, well, this 40-minute goodbye is ending now, so that's it for this week. I think we'll talk to you next week. I don't know when Darick gets back from LA, so I don't know for sure. But if nothing else, there is an After Dark episode. But if the streak gets broken next week, it does. I don't really give a shit. But regardless, we will talk to you when we talk to you. Bye.